Hello everybody. So in this video I'm going to show you how to make this super simple little mini skirt, okay? And this is part of the Virtual Blythe Retreat Taster for September 2024 that we're calling Grunge Fashion. It's a Grunge Fashion Taster. We're turning our dollies into little Grunge Fashion dolls. And you can see here I've already got a couple of pieces of her outfit that I've already made as part of this series of workshops that my sister Terry and I, Tapping Flamingo, are offering to you guys free of charge. Please join us over on the Facebook group. It's called Blythe Doll Buddies. We're all going to be sharing our pictures over there of our grungy dolls, and that's where you can pick up the free pattern for this little skirt too. It's listed under the file section, and you can join us over there and pick up the file under the file section and download it. It's a free PDF. It has the pattern for this skirt and also for the little top, which is also another workshop in this series. And yeah, so just stay tuned. I'm going to tell you all the supplies you need to make the skirt and then show you real quickly how to make it. As you can see, it's super simple. It's a great beginner project, great scrap buster project too. Alright guys, here are the supplies you're going to need to make the Blythe mini skirt. Obviously you're going to need some fabric, and because we are doing a sort of a grunge fashion here, I decided to go with some plaid fabric that I have. This is just regular cotton fabric. It's kind of on the thick side, so it's considered quilter's cotton. But you could use flannel if you wanted. That would actually really work well for this. Anything plaid if you're going for the grunge fashion look. Otherwise, if you're making this for any other type of fashion, obviously pick whatever cotton fabric works for you, but that's what I'm going to use for this. You also need typical regular sewing supplies, like, you know, your pens and your needles and your scissors, a little ruler's handy. Obviously, you're going to need your pattern. If I haven't said it already, you can pick that up for free over on the Blythe Doll Buddies Facebook group. We have it under the files section by the time this video posts. In addition, some things that maybe not everybody uses as far as sewing goes, I recommend using some fray check here. I'm going to cut the pattern piece out on my fabric, and then I'm going to fray check it, which means I'm going to put this fray check all around the edges. If you don't want to use fray check and you don't really care, you don't have to finish the edges, but I kind of recommend always doing that. You could even zigzag if you want. And because I'm using fray check, I also use some foil. So I'll show you how to do that here in a minute. Also, a little bit of tissue. I'm going to be sewing this skirt on my sewing machine. You could also sew it by hand. This is a very easy project that you could very easily do by hand, no problemo. But I want to use my sewing machine. And this is going to be a fairly small piece of fabric, so I've learned that to help stabilize the fabric when you're putting it under your sewing machine foot, a little bit of tissue is really helpful. You're going to need some type of fastener for the back of the skirt. I'm going to use a couple little pieces of Velcro. All right, and these are very small, so like, is it even an inch? It's about an inch. Yeah, so it's an inch long. But you could use snaps. You know, you could use whatever fastener suits you. You're going to need something to close it up in the back. All right, so let's get going. I'm going to go ahead and show you how to cut out the pattern and add some fray check to the edges. Oh, forgot to mention this little doohickey. This is super handy. It's called a purple thing. You can get them on Amazon very inexpensively, and they usually come in a pack of about 6. Sometimes something like this is really useful when you're sewing small items and you might have trouble feeding the fabric into the foot. So this kind of helps guide it a little bit. It's like having kind of a extra flat finger. I did use this when I was sewing on my sewing machine with this little skirt, so that's why I said I recommend it. It's not necessary. Your sewing machine may be okay with it, but mine has a little trouble sometimes sucking in small bits of fabric. Alright, I've pinned my pattern piece to my fabric. I'm going to cut it out now. And I should mention that I will be using a 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way around. Okay, and that is already included on the pattern piece. You do not have to add a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I know some patterns don't have that. Some of them expect you to add it yourself, which I don't quite get that. Alright, let me cut this off real quick here like this. I don't quite understand that concept, but yeah, but I've added the 1/4 inch seam allowance already, so you do not have to worry about adding that to whatever you cut out here or when you're sewing. Right, so I'm going to finish cutting all around and be right back. I also want to mention that I did pre-wash my fabric, and that is, again, that is something that's up to the individual person. It is not necessarily required, but with doll clothes, especially if you're using dark colors like we have red here, I kind of recommend soaking it a little bit, washing it, so that you end up maybe getting rid of some of the extra dye. So this is already pre-washed. And then I'm just going to, I put my cut out piece of fabric here on the foil. And let's see if I can talk and chew gum at the same time. I'm going to add just, you can see, just add a teeny tiny little strip of fray check all the way around it. If you don't want to use fray check and you don't care if it frays a little bit, you can skip this step. Or if you want to use your sewing machine and just do a small zigzag all the way around, that will also help with fraying. Alright, so I'm going to set this aside to dry. It does take a while to dry, so make sure you kind of just leave it alone. Usually for me, I'm in Florida, it takes a good 10-15 minutes for this to completely dry. And so I'm just going to set that aside. And while I'm waiting for it to dry, I will go put in some red thread in my sewing machine. Again, you can do this by hand if you want, and you don't have to use a sewing machine, but I found it easier, a little bit quicker to do it on the sewing machine versus by hand. If you are going to do it by hand, this would be a time for you to get your thread out and find a good little needle to help you stitch it up. I'll show you how to do that next. Alright, my fray check is dry. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is fold over. Like I said, there's already a 1/4 inch all the way around for your seam allowance on this pattern. So I'm just going to fold it over. And if you're unsure, like, you know, what is a 1/4 inch, these little gauge rulers are super handy. They're available at most craft stores, and also, what do you call it? Walmart has these very inexpensively. So I'm just going to go in there in the middle. Pin that. You could also eyeball it, but just for you guys, I'm going to go ahead and put in a couple of pins here. So I'm going to do the top. I'm going to do the top and the bottom. Again, 1/4 inch, just fold it, and it is a little curved. All right, so don't think something's weird there. It is curved. That's on purpose. Just do the best you can. 1/4 inch, fold it over. And while you're doing this, turn your iron on to warm up, because that's the next thing that I suggest you guys do. Is to, after, here, let me do that one more. Is to take your iron and press. Now I have glass pens, so I don't have to worry about my pins melting. If you have plastic heads on your pens, be careful there. You could also just, you know, do it by hand and eyeball it. It doesn't have to be exact. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to press it before I go over to the sewing machine. This is one reason why I like pressing, is it's going to make a nice fold there, and it'll make it a lot easier for me to stitch because it'll be pressed. Alright, so I'm done ironing. Okay. And I'm not going to put the pins back in. This is plenty good enough for me to go to the sewing machine at this point. And this is what I'm talking about now. This is where it's nice to have a little bit of tissue. Great way to do some recycling. And I'm literally going to have the tissue underneath the fabric as I insert it from here and stitch all the way down into on my sewing machine. All right. If you're sewing this by hand, you probably don't need, you're not going to need this. This is just kind of a way, like I said, to keep the fabric from getting sucked down into the bobbin case underneath the needle on your sewing machine. That can happen sometimes. So if you ever have that problem, tissue paper is kind of brilliant. All right. So otherwise, do it by hand. If you're going to stitch it by hand, just small stitches. Keep this in mind that this is for a doll, so you got to go got to get things a little bit smaller, just do straight stitch all the way down and then straight stitch all the way down, and I will be back for the next step. Oh, and I should mention, maybe I'll show you the next step after I stitch here. Once you stitched this on, you just peel off the paper, okay? So it's very easy to peel off. All right, so trim off any of the excess threads before you move on to the next part, just because it can get like kind of in your way, because you've probably guessed what the next part is, and that is to fold over the edges, the other edges, and again press them with your iron. Fold them over 1/4 inch, press with your iron, and then stitch them down. Same thing, 1/4 inch, you can just fold it over, take your iron, press, do it on the other side, go back to your sewing machine, add a little bit more tissue, especially this is even a smaller piece, okay? A little bit more tissue underneath there, stitch down, and do that on the other side, and I'll come right back and show you how to finish it off. All right, cool beans, guys. You know what's next. We just got to add a little snap to the back or Velcro, whatever closure you want. In this case, I decided to go ahead and use some Velcro. So again, you can either hand stitch or use a sewing machine for the Velcro. A little tip, something, believe it or not, I just really learned, and I didn't completely, I mean, I kind of knew, but I wasn't 100% sure. When you get Velcro, make sure you check the edges there. That's what you're supposed to sew on, okay? This is pretty forgiving, but this guy here, the other side where it's really heavy duty, there's a little groove right here before the Velcro-y part, the little locky things start up. So that's what you're supposed to stitch on, all right? So, yeah, I'm going to, so that it wraps around like this, so there'll be one here and then one here. And I'm just going to go to my sewing machine, stitch those on, and show you the finished skirt on the dolly. All right, I've got my Velcro on, so my skirt is finished. And let's go ahead and put it on the girl. Let's see. Like I said, this skirt will fit either the traditional stock doll body, or it will also fit the larger A-zone. If you wanted to adjust it a little bit, as far as maybe using it for a different doll, you can just make it tighter here. You can see, like here, I could make it even tighter by just moving the Velcro over if I wanted to, okay? So just keep that in mind. You can adjust it very easily to fit a couple of different size 1/6 scale dollies. So now she has her little grungy t-shirt, her little grungy skirt here, this little mini skirt, which, like I said, you could use it for other types of fashion. It doesn't have to be grunge. I just picked the plaid to kind of go with the grunge look, but yeah, it fits her really, really well. All right, let me know if you guys have any questions down below. I hope you're having a good time with these VBR taster workshops for the fashion grunge that we're doing for September 2024. Put your comments down below. Also, any questions you have or any suggestions, always open to those. Pretty soon we're going to have this girl finished off. I've got to make her hat. She's going to have some grungy jewelry and also a pull cord. And then, of course, I've got to put some shoes on her. Thanks for watching.